What happens when one of television's most beloved hosts walks onto a set and completely dismantles a co-host's argument in real time? That's exactly what we witnessed when Ryan Seacrest appeared on The View, and what started as a friendly conversation quickly turned into one of the most intense exchanges in daytime television history. Before we get into this, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below telling me whose side you're on in this debate, because trust me, you're going to have an opinion by the end of this video. So Ryan Seacrest sits down at the table, and right from the start, you can feel the energy. The panel is discussing the current state of entertainment media, and Joy Behar jumps right in with a comment about how modern television has lost its authenticity. She says, "Ryan, you've been in this industry for decades. Don't you think that everything now is just manufactured drama? Everything is scripted? Everything is produced to death? Where's the real connection with audiences?" Ryan leans back, smiles politely, and responds, "Joy, I think that's an interesting perspective, but I have to respectfully disagree. If anything, audiences today are more connected to content than ever before. Social media has given people a direct line to creators, to hosts, to performers. The manufactured drama you're talking about, that's always existed. The difference now is that audiences are smart enough to see through it." Joy immediately fires back. "Oh, come on, Ryan. You can't seriously tell me that reality television, which you've been a huge part of, is authentic. American Idol, all those singing competitions, they're edited to create narratives. They pick heroes and villains. That's not real." And this is where Ryan starts to push back a little harder. He says, "Joy, with all due respect, you're conflating editing with dishonesty. Yes, we edit shows. Every single television program is edited, including this one. But that doesn't mean the emotions aren't real, that the talent isn't real, that the journeys these people go on aren't real. When someone stands on that stage and sings their heart out, and America votes for them, that's as real as it gets." The other co-hosts are kind of watching this unfold, and you can see they're not sure whether to jump in or let it play out. Joy doesn't back down, though. She says, "But you're making money off these people's dreams, Ryan. You're packaging their vulnerability and selling it to advertisers. How is that not exploitative?" Ryan's expression shifts slightly, and you can tell he's done being polite. He says, "Joy, I'm going to stop you right there. Making money doesn't equal exploitation. These contestants come on these shows willingly. They sign contracts. They understand the process, and many of them have launched incredible careers because of these platforms. Kelly Clarkson, Carrie Underwood, Jennifer Hudson, these are people who might never have had opportunities without these shows. So to reduce it to exploitation is not just unfair, it's insulting to everyone involved." Joy crosses her arms and says, "Well, what about the people who don't make it? What about the ones who get humiliated in auditions, who get their dreams crushed on national television? You don't think that's problematic?" Ryan doesn't hesitate. He says, "Joy, failure is part of life, and learning to handle rejection is part of growing up. These shows don't create rejection, they just show it. And honestly, I think there's value in that. We live in a culture now where everyone gets a participation trophy, where we're so afraid of hurting feelings that we don't prepare people for reality. These auditions, as tough as they can be, they teach resilience. They teach people that not everyone is going to love what you do, and that's okay." One of the other co-hosts tries to lighten the mood and says something about how both perspectives have merit, but Joy is not having it. She cuts in and says, "Ryan, that sounds like you're just defending a system that benefits you. Of course you're going to say it's all fine because you've made a fortune from it." And this is where the tension really escalates. Ryan looks directly at Joy and says, "Joy, I could say the same thing about you. You've made a career out of having strong opinions on this show. Does that mean every opinion you have is just designed to keep you employed? Or is it possible that you actually believe what you're saying, just like I believe in the work I do? The table goes quiet for a second. You can feel that shift where everyone realizes this isn't just a playful debate anymore. Joy's face tightens, and she says, "That's not the same thing, Ryan, and you know it." Ryan doesn't let up. He says, "It's exactly the same thing, Joy. You're questioning my integrity because I work in entertainment that you personally don't respect. But the truth is, millions of people love these shows. They connect with them. They vote. They engage. They participate. Just because it's not your cup of tea doesn't make it less valid." Joy snaps back with, "I never said it wasn't valid. I said it was manufactured, and you're sitting here proving my point by getting defensive about it." Ryan actually laughs at this, but it's not a friendly laugh. It's one of those laughs that says, "Are you serious right now?" He says, "Joy, I'm not defensive. I'm correcting you. There's a difference. You made a claim. I provided a counter-argument with actual examples, and now you're saying I'm defensive because I don't agree with you. That's not how debates work." Another co-host tries to jump in again, saying something about how passionate discussions are, what the view is all about, but Ryan cuts her off, politely but firmly. He says, "No, I want to finish this point because it's important. Joy, you and I both know that television is a business, but it's also an art form. It's also a way to connect people, to tell stories, to create moments that matter. And just because something is popular doesn't mean it's shallow. Just because something makes money doesn't mean it's soulless. I've spent my entire career trying to create opportunities for people, trying to give audiences something they enjoy, and I'm proud of that work." Joy stares at him for a moment, and then she says, "Well, Ryan, I think we're just going to have to agree to disagree on this one." But Ryan shakes his head. He says, "No, Joy, we're not going to do that. Because agreeing to disagree implies that both viewpoints are equally valid, and in this case, one of us is making assumptions, and the other is speaking from actual experience. I've been on set with these contestants. I've seen their faces when they succeed and when they fail. I've watched careers launch, and I've watched people handle disappointment with grace. So when you sit here and say it's all manufactured, you're dismissing real human experiences, and I can't just agree to disagree with that." The atmosphere is electric now. The audience is completely silent, and you can tell that everyone watching at home is glued to their screens. Joy takes a breath, and you can see she's trying to decide how to respond. She finally says, "Ryan, I think you're taking this way too personally." And Ryan, without missing a beat, says, "Joy, I think you're not taking it personally enough. These are people's lives we're talking about. These are dreams, careers, futures. If we're going to have this conversation, then yes, it should be personal, because it matters." Joy opens her mouth to respond, but Ryan holds up a hand and continues. He says, "And let me tell you something else, Joy. You talk about authenticity like it's this rare thing that only exists in certain types of media, but authenticity isn't about the format, it's about the people. And I have worked with some of the most authentic, genuine, talented people in the world. So when you dismiss an entire genre of television as fake, you're dismissing them too. And they deserve better than that." Joy leans forward, and you can see the fire in her eyes now. She says, "Okay, Ryan, let me ask you this. If these shows are so authentic and so meaningful, why do they all follow the same formula? Why is there always the sob story, the comeback kid, the underdog? You're telling me that just happens naturally?" Ryan doesn't flinch. He says, "Joy, patterns exist because they resonate with people. The hero's journey has been the foundation of storytelling for thousands of years. It's not manipulation, it's human nature. People connect with struggle and triumph because those are universal experiences. Every single person watching has faced challenges, has had setbacks, has hoped for a second chance. So yes, those narratives appear frequently because they matter to people. Joy shakes her head and says, "But you're selecting for those stories, Ryan. You're choosing which contestants to feature, which backgrounds to highlight. That's curation, and curation is a form of manipulation." Ryan's voice gets a bit sharper now. He says, "Joy, by that logic, every news program is manipulation. Every documentary is manipulation. Every biography ever written is manipulation. Choosing what to focus on is not the same as lying. It's called editing, and it's a necessary part of communication. You can't show everything, so you show what's most relevant, most compelling, most meaningful. That's not dishonesty, that's craft." One of the other co-hosts, clearly uncomfortable with how heated this has become, tries to redirect by asking Ryan about his transition to hosting traditional network television, but Joy cuts her off. She says, "No, I want to stay on this, because Ryan is dancing around my actual point. The point is that reality television pretends to be something it's not. It brands itself as real when it's actually highly produced." Ryan looks at her with what can only be described as complete exasperation and says, "Joy, what do you think this show is? Do you think The View just happens? Do you think there are no producers? No segment planning? No discussions about what topics to cover? Do you think the cameras just magically know where to point? Every single piece of television you've ever been on is produced. That's what makes it television, and not just random people talking in a room." Joy's face goes red, and she says, "That is completely different, Ryan. We're having real conversations about real issues. We're not manufacturing drama for ratings." And Ryan just stares at her for a long moment before saying, "Joy, you're literally manufacturing drama right now. We came on to talk about entertainment, and you've turned this into a confrontation because confrontation gets attention. And that's fine. That's what this show does. But don't sit there and act like you're above the very thing you're accusing me of." The audience actually gasps. You can hear it clearly. One of the other co-hosts tries to laugh it off, saying something like, "Well, this got spicy," but nobody at that table is laughing. Joy looks absolutely stunned. She says, "Excuse me? Are you seriously comparing what we do here to reality television competitions?" Ryan nods and says, "In terms of production value and intent to engage audiences, absolutely. Joy, you have writers, you have producers, you have meetings about what's going to generate conversation. The only difference between what you do and what I do is the format. But we're both in the business of creating compelling television that people want to watch. The difference is, I'm honest about it." Joy stands up slightly from her chair, and for a second, it looks like she might actually walk off. But she sits back down and says, "I cannot believe you just said that. We discuss politics, social issues, things that actually matter. You're comparing that to singing competitions?" Ryan's calm demeanor is almost unsettling at this point. He says, "Joy, who decides what matters? You? Because I promise you, for a lot of people out there, watching someone achieve their dream of becoming a singer matters a great deal. For parents watching their kids be inspired to pursue their passions, that matters. For people who just want an escape from the heaviness of the news cycle, that matters. You don't get to be the arbiter of what's meaningful to other people." Joy throws her hands up and says, "So you're saying a singing competition is as important as discussions about democracy and human rights?" And Ryan says, "I'm saying both have value in different ways, and pretending that only serious political discourse has merit is elitist and disconnected from how most people actually live their lives. Not everyone wants to spend every waking moment debating policy, Joy. Sometimes people just want to be entertained, and there's nothing wrong with that." Another co-host finally manages to get a word in and says, "I think what's interesting here is that you're both passionate about different types of content, and maybe that's okay." But Joy immediately responds with, "No, it's not about different types of content. It's about integrity." Ryan cuts her off and says, "Integrity? Joy, let me tell you about integrity. Integrity is treating people with respect. Integrity is honoring the hard work that goes into creating any form of entertainment. Integrity is not dismissing something just because it doesn't fit your narrow definition of what's worthwhile. I have integrity in my work, and so do the thousands of people who work on these shows. And frankly, I'm tired of people like you acting like what we do is somehow less than what you do. Joy's voice rises as she says, "People like me? What is that supposed to mean?" Ryan doesn't back down. He says, "People who think that if something is popular or fun or accessible, it must be dumb. People who confuse being critical with being intelligent. People who think looking down on entertainment makes them more sophisticated. I've met people like that my entire career, and it's exhausting. Because while you're sitting here criticizing these shows, millions of people are finding joy in them. And joy matters. Joy, even if you don't think so." The irony of him saying that to someone named Joy is not lost on anyone, and you can see a few of the other co-hosts suppressing smiles despite the tension. Joy says, "That is not fair, Ryan. I never said joy doesn't matter." Ryan leans in and says, "You didn't have to say it. It's in every word you've said since I sat down. You've made it clear that you think what I do is beneath you, that the audiences who enjoy it are somehow being duped. And I'm telling you right now, that's wrong. Those audiences are smart. They know what they're watching. They're choosing to engage with it, and their choices are just as valid as yours." Joy says, "I think you're putting words in my mouth, Ryan. I never said the audiences were dumb." Ryan responds, "You said the shows are manufactured and exploitative, Joy. What do you think that implies about the people who watch them? If someone is being exploited, that means they're being taken advantage of. That means they don't know better. That's the subtext of everything you've said, whether you want to admit it or not." Joy looks around at her co-hosts, clearly hoping for backup, but they're all just watching. One of them finally says, "I think both of you are making interesting points, and maybe we should take a breath here." But Ryan isn't done. He says, "No, I actually think this is an important conversation to have. Because there's this divide in media right now between people who think entertainment should only be educational or challenging, and people who understand that entertainment can be many things. It can be escapism. It can be inspiration. It can be community. It can be comfort. And all of those things have value." Joy says, "Fine, Ryan. You've made your point. I get it. You think I'm an elitist who doesn't understand regular people." Ryan shakes his head and says, "I didn't say that, Joy. What I'm saying is that you're making judgments about something you clearly haven't spent much time trying to understand. Have you ever been to an American Idol audition? Have you ever watched a contestant go through the entire process? Have you ever seen what happens when someone's life changes because they got an opportunity they never would have had otherwise?" Joy says, "No, I haven't, because I don't need to watch a reality show to understand reality." And Ryan just smiles. But it's not a warm smile. He says, "And there it is. You've already decided you know everything you need to know without actually experiencing it. That's not open-mindedness, Joy. That's prejudice. You're prejudging something without giving it a fair chance, and then you're criticizing people like me who have actually done the work." Joy's face flushes deeper, and she says, "Now you're calling me prejudiced? That's rich coming from someone who makes a living off of spectacle." Ryan's voice stays steady, but there's steel in it now. He says, "I'm calling out what I see, Joy. And what I see is someone who has built a career on having strong opinions, which is fine, but who isn't willing to apply the same scrutiny to their own work that they apply to everyone else's. You want to talk about spectacle? This entire show is built on spectacle. You have different viewpoints clashing. You have heated debates. You have moments designed to go viral. And again, that's not a criticism. That's smart television. But you can't have it both ways. You can't benefit from the same mechanisms you're condemning." One of the other co-hosts tries to interject with, "I think we're all getting a little too intense here. Maybe we should move on to our next topic," but Joy waves her off. She says, "No, I want Ryan to explain to me how a show where we discuss important political and social issues is the same as a show where people sing for votes." Ryan takes a visible breath, clearly trying to maintain his composure. He says, "Joy, I've explained it multiple times now, and you keep rephrasing the question hoping for a different answer. So let me be absolutely clear. Both shows serve a purpose. Both shows connect with audiences. Both shows are produced with care and intention. The difference is that you value one type of content over another, and you're using that personal preference to make objective claims about quality and integrity. That's your bias showing, not some universal truth about what constitutes good television." Joy says, "So you're saying there's no difference between substance and fluff?" Ryan actually laughs, but it's a frustrated laugh. He says, "There you go again with the loaded language. Calling something fluff is dismissive. It's reductive. Some of the most impactful television moments in history have come from entertainment programming. When Kelly Clarkson won American Idol, that inspired countless young people to pursue music. When contestants share their personal stories, that creates empathy and understanding. Those are substantive outcomes, Joy, even if they don't come wrapped in political commentary." Joy crosses her arms tightly and says, "I just think we have a responsibility, as people in media, to elevate the conversation, not dumb it down." And this is where Ryan's patience finally seems to snap. He says, "And I think we have a responsibility to meet people where they are, not where we think they should be. You talk about elevating the conversation like you're doing people a favor by forcing them to engage with content they don't want. But real connection, real communication, that happens when you respect your audience enough to give them what they're actually looking for. Not everyone wants to be lectured, Joy. Not everyone wants to spend their free time stressed about politics. Some people just want to watch talented individuals compete and be entertained, and those people deserve respect too." Joy says, "I never said they don't deserve respect." Ryan shoots back immediately. "Your words say one thing, but your tone says another. Every time you use words like manufactured, exploitative, or fluff, you're signaling contempt. Not just for the shows, but for the people who make them and the people who watch them. And maybe you don't mean it that way, but that's how it comes across." Another co-host, clearly desperate to salvage this segment, says, "Well, I think Ryan makes an interesting point about how we all have our own preferences in media, and that's what makes the landscape so diverse." But Joy is not ready to let this go. She says, "Ryan, do you really not see any problem with the way reality television has changed the industry? The way it's prioritized cheap content over scripted programming? The way it's put writers and actors out of work?" Ryan pauses, and for the first time, he looks genuinely thoughtful rather than defensive. He says, "Joy, those are legitimate concerns, and I understand them. The industry has changed dramatically, and not all of those changes have been positive. But you're conflating multiple issues. Reality television didn't kill scripted programming. Economic factors, streaming services, changing viewer habits, those things created a shift. Reality television was a response to that shift, not the cause of it. And as for putting people out of work, these shows employ thousands of people: producers, editors, camera operators, sound technicians, casting directors, the list goes on. Those are real jobs supporting real families." Joy says, "But they're not writers. They're not actors. Those are the people who have been hurt by this shift." Ryan nods and says, "You're right, and I have tremendous respect for writers and actors. I've worked with incredible scripted content throughout my career. But the solution isn't to demonize reality television. The solution is to find ways to support multiple types of content. And honestly, Joy, if you're so concerned about writers and actors, maybe you should be having this conversation with network executives and streaming platforms who decide what gets funded, not with hosts who are just doing their jobs." Joy says, "You're deflecting, Ryan. You have influence. You could use that influence to advocate for different types of content. Ryan's expression hardens again. He says, I use my influence every single day, Joy. I use it to create opportunities for people who wouldn't otherwise have them. I use it to bring entertainment to millions of people who need an escape. I use it to build platforms that launch careers. What more do you want from me? Should I apologize for being successful at what I do? Should I feel guilty because people enjoy the content I create? Joy says, I'm not asking you to feel guilty. I'm asking you to acknowledge that there are problems with the system. Ryan says, of course there are problems with the system. There are problems with every system. But that doesn't mean the entire thing is broken or worthless. You're throwing the baby out with the bathwater, Joy. You're so focused on criticizing that you can't see any of the good that comes from what we do. Another co-host finally manages to say, I think we're coming up on a break soon, so maybe we can wrap up this discussion. But Joy says, one more thing. Ryan, don't you think you have a responsibility to use your platform for more than just entertainment? Ryan looks directly into the camera for a moment, then back at Joy. He says, Joy, entertainment is not less than. It's not a consolation prize. It's not what we do when we can't do something more important. Entertainment is vital. It's how we cope with hard times. It's how we celebrate good times. It's how we connect with each other. It's how we dream. And I refuse to apologize for dedicating my career to something that brings people happiness. If you can't understand that, if you can't respect that, then we're never going to see eye to eye on this. Joy says, I respect your passion, Ryan. I just don't agree with your perspective. Ryan says, and that's fine, Joy. You don't have to agree with me, but you also don't have to demean what I do or question my integrity because we have different values. We can disagree without being disagreeable, although I think we might have crossed that line about 10 minutes ago. There's a moment of silence, and then one of the other co-hosts laughs nervously and says, well, this has certainly been one of our most spirited discussions. Ryan, despite the contentious nature of this conversation, we appreciate you being here and being so candid with us. Ryan smiles, but it's tight. He says, I appreciate the opportunity. I always believe in having honest conversations, even when they're uncomfortable. That's the only way we learn from each other. Joy says, agreed. Even if we don't see eye to eye, I respect that you stood your ground. Ryan says, likewise, Joy. You're consistent in your convictions, and I can respect that even when I disagree with them. One of the co-hosts says, and that's what The View is all about, different perspectives coming together. Ryan Seacrest, everybody. The audience applauds, but it's a strange energy, not quite tense, not quite relieved, just this unusual buzz of people processing what they just witnessed. Ryan shakes hands with each of the co-hosts, and when he gets to Joy, they hold eye contact for just a second longer than comfortable. It's not hostile exactly, but it's definitely not warm. As the show cuts to commercial, you can see Ryan heading off the set, and the co-hosts immediately huddle together, clearly debating what just happened. And honestly, what just happened was one of the most real, unfiltered exchanges we've seen on daytime television in years. No fake laughter, no smoothing things over, just two people with fundamentally different views about media and entertainment going head to head. So what do you think? Was Ryan right to push back so hard on Joy's criticisms, or did he take it too far? Do you think reality television is manufactured exploitation, or is it legitimate entertainment that deserves respect? This is the kind of debate that doesn't have easy answers, and that's what makes it so compelling. Make sure you hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and drop a comment below answering this question. Whose side are you on in this debate? Ryan's or Joy's? And why? I want to hear your thoughts because something tells me this conversation is far from over,